Sending audio through.
That was by design today? Oh, I'm just kidding. All right, so we have a motion and support on the table to approve last meeting's minutes. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed, please say no. Last meeting's minutes have been approved. Next item on our agenda is the Information Technology Annual Report. Tim.
Good morning. Kind of a poor segue with technical issues there. But anyway, I appreciate it, the opportunity this morning to talk a little bit about IT, what we got going on. I know we're sometimes behind the scenes a little bit, but certainly excited to be here this morning.
Tim, is your mic on?
I think it is. Am I not? Do I need to move it closer?
Yeah.
Here, let me shift around here. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, happy to be here this morning. Excited to spend a few minutes talking about what we've got going on. We'll jump right in. Here's kind of the roadmap. Certainly no surprises here, alignment, metrics. We're going to talk a little bit about IT security. That's the hot button, of course, today. And then other things besides security and kind of where we're headed. So I know we kind of call it a performance measurement review, but it's really kind of that annual report. So this is what we do. Provide responsive, quality, cost-effective. That's kind of the flowery language there, talking about what IT does around the county and with some of our partners out there. We tend to distill it down a little bit to the simplified version, which is getting the right people access to the right data on devices that we know about. And that's extremely important to us. So how it fits into the strategic objectives there, we're all about service delivery and using technology to better deliver services. So that's what we do. And then lastly on that slide, how do we do it? So just kind of a couple points about our culture there. We're always about cost reduction. How do we do things better? How do we simplify if we need to? A lot of continuous improvement activities that relates to IT security, IT service delivery specifically, and really we focus a lot on the user experience. When we roll something out, what is the user experience, right? Whether it's password complexity, those types of things. Hey, what is the user going to experience? We're always evaluating technology fit. We talk about things like AI, right, and things like that. Well, where does that fit in the county, right? Everybody wants to do it, but does it fit? And how does it fit? So we're always talking about that quite a bit, and we always practice county values. And then lastly, we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we like to take what we do very seriously, and that's kind of our cultural mantra that we operate with. We also don't do math in front of people. That one did not make it on the slide, but we don't do math in front of people. So, all right, kind of by the numbers here. So this is what we look like really from a scope and scale perspective. If you haven't really worked with us a lot in the past, we've got 42 folks on staff, organized across 8 functional work teams. Average tenure is 13 years, and that's starting to drop a little bit as we've got a few folks retiring over the last few years. We're getting a little bit younger, but still a pretty well-seasoned group there. 2,300 computers supported across the county, across all of our departments. In our data centers, we operate 2 data centers. We've got about 330-ish servers. I use ish because servers are like rabbits. I know it's spring, but they multiply, it seems like. And 90% virtual. We use a lot of technologies to reduce our technology stack and gain efficiencies in our data centers for things that we operate on premise. Network devices supported, 368. So this is your switches, your routers, your wireless access points, those types of things. Those continue to creep up on an annual basis just as the county footprint spreads. External connections, 53. Those are connections to state, federal resources, other municipalities, partners that we need to connect with for lines of business. Database supported, 478. Again, lines of business. This is our online payment applications, those types of databases, those types of things. Requests for service in 2024, as of the calendar year, we had a little over 1,400 requests for service come into our service desk. And if you look, it's pretty similar to last year. Actually, it's within a few tickets. We actually had to double check the math on that just to make sure, but we're pretty consistent there, about 14,000 requests per year. And then on-premise uptime. So for services we provide out of our data centers, they are up 99.99% of the time. And if you're a geek, you can do the math on that, but it works out to about 4.4 minutes per month of unplanned downtime. So that doesn't include cloud applications and things like that, where we measure on SLAs we have contract arrangements with, but for on-premise things that we provide, we're pretty proud of that statistic. And then lastly, or I shouldn't say lastly, but OnBase there. OnBase is our document management system. And we have seen tremendous growth over the last year, probably more in the last year than we've seen. But currently there's a little over 43 million pages stored, 8.5 by 11 page. And that's a 22% increase over 2023. That's pretty significant. And then there's kind of an interesting metric there we like to do is how many file cabinets does that represent? It's a little over almost 1.5 miles now, placed end to end. So we'll talk a little bit more about OnBase coming up, but that is one of our primary applications that we support, develop against, and is really running more and more of our business. And then lastly, the website. I know we went through the website transition here a couple months ago, but as of the end of 2024, which was still on the old website, think of accesskent.com, 59% of our visitor traffic was on a mobile device. So that's a mobile phone or a mobile device. That continues to tick up. Last year it was about 56. Now it's 59. So really, people are really choosing to interact with us more and more on mobile devices. All right, talking a little bit about IT security here. So got a couple slides on this. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants to know a little bit more about it. But we've got 2 full-time IT security people. We're blessed to have 2 people that work full-time among our peers. We're fairly unique. We bake it into everything we do. We try to bake security into everything we do. But we have 2 people that focus nothing more on full-time. And so we're blessed to have that. From a budgetary perspective, this is one we're interested in. We spend about 21% of our budget, the IT budget, on security-related services. Compared to the national average of large government, excuse me, they're about 13.2%. Large government is defined as government over 1,000 people. So we spend a little bit more than the average. We tend to see good results as a result of that, but I think it goes to show the importance we place on it. So. Okay. Everyone's interested in it. You know, it's ratings agencies, insurance renewals, our cyber insurance. We have a ransomware rider now. Everybody we talk to, as you move through the county, is interested in IT security, and that's good. And it used to be that people came in that did these audits, they were financial people. That would ask some IT questions, but you could tell they weren't an IT person. Now what you're seeing is they're coming with an IT security person, and that's good. But it does show that they are very, very interested in it, and the amount of data we provide for these rating agencies, insurance renewals, it's more and more every year. And increasingly, it's kind of a show me. Don't just tell me you're doing it, but now show me you're doing it. Lot going on there. We follow a couple different frameworks. NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, they have a security framework we follow on a day-to-day basis. We practice defense in depth and best practice. So nothing unique that we do for government as opposed to private sector. It's more about the type of information we protect, but the method in which we do it is largely what you might find in private practice, or private industry, I should say. Ongoing regulatory audits and compliance, we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. You're going to see that kind of recurring on a number of different slides as I talk here, just because it has become just an ongoing thing we do, rather than a once or twice a year thing. We do an annual penetration test, internal and external, so we have people try to get in from the outside. And then if they can, and they haven't, so that's good, but if they do, we assume, hey, if they could get in, what do they have access to? So we kind of have a couple of different perspectives on that. We do that at least once a year. We don't tell people when it's coming. I don't tell our staff when it's coming. I'm the only one who knows. And just so that we can stay current, we can stay consistent, and we can't sort of be prepared, if you were. So it's always an interesting exercise we go through annually. Edge devices, kind of talking about that. Laptops are now the edge device. It used to be that, think of the internet firewall as your edge device. Not anymore. If you're working from home on your home wireless network, you are the edge device. And so we're very, very, very careful about secure workstation configurations and how we manage our edge devices now out in the field. Incident response plan, I'll talk a little bit more about that in engagement with the EOC there with Scott Corbin, but we spent a lot of time talking about and walking through what would happen. And then lastly, data loss protection on this slide. We're also concerned about what goes out. So we send about 55,000 emails a day through our email system, all sorts of different information, but we're watching what that data means. So people are erroneously trying to send out social security numbers, driver's license numbers. We catch that, we get a report on it, we can follow up on it. So we are very, very closely watching data going out. Or it's even more scary, but where we have two cloud systems that are trading county data, it doesn't even touch our premises, right? So cloud to cloud, but it's our data, what's actually in that data, and we need to watch that too, so. So a lot going on there, a little more security. People are still the number one threat. I think that's not a surprise. AI, or what I'll term irresponsible use of AI, is really evolved into sophisticated phishing campaigns for email, and we see it almost every day. Nefarious actors are getting very good at crafting emails, harder and harder to catch. Ongoing vigilance is really still something that we preach, and is our best approach. Multi-factor authentication, which is kind of that everybody sees it now when you log into your bank or to your healthcare, right? How do I know you are who you are, right? We do that here. We do it across 60 different applications within the county. It's really identity management. We continue to expand our security awareness and anti-phishing campaigns. We talked a little bit about that. The bottom metric there shows that we're actually worse. We test our county staff on an annual basis. How likely are they to click on something bad in their email? Last year, we were really good, 4.2%. But as I said, things are getting more sophisticated. We just made it harder. So as we got better, we just said, let's make it harder and see how we react. Well, we're a little bit worse, but the reason we're worse is because we've made it more sophisticated, and we're trying to match what we're seeing out in the wild as far as the landscape goes. So we're a little bit worse this year, but we're starting to see that come down a little bit. I think we were 6.6 earlier in the year. We drifted down to 6.4, so we're getting better. Endpoint detection and response is kind of interesting for us. This used to be your old antivirus. You know, your Symantec could download a DAT file once a day, once a week. Now we are using behavior-based defense on our endpoint devices, and it really watches what you do and learns how you work. And when you deviate from that norm, then it does something, right? So that's kind of the way that industry is really moving. It's no longer antivirus, it's endpoint detection and response. It's behavior-based. So the way my laptop behaves is going to be different than somebody else's because it learns how I work. And then again, if I do something different, or if somebody else was to use that device and behave differently, it's going to do something, it's going to react to that. So we like doing that. Increased spam and malware. We now have message search and destroy capabilities, right? So when that message comes into the organization, it's a bad message, somebody reports it, we can proactively go out and delete that from mailboxes, right? So other people aren't subject to that. Secure workstation configurations, we talked a little bit about on the edge, so. All right, and even more security details, well, we can't really talk about that. I can tell you what we do, but I can't tell you how we do it in a meeting, in an open meeting, right? So can't really tell you how the sausage is made, as it were. But this is really just an invitation. If anybody wants to really get into the weeds on how we do some of this stuff, happy to do that, happy to take the discussion offline. But hopefully that's a good overview of kind of the emphasis we're putting on it. But we do other things too. So talking about significant accomplishments a little bit, IT support for the new Office of the Public Defender, which stood up, that was a huge lift for us. Really, it's end-to-end on the IT spectrum, from new laptops to phones to mobile devices to Ring Central. You name it, it was really a big IT lift for us, but we got them stood up. They were great partners on that journey, very understanding, and that was a success. They are up and running, so we were very pleased with that. We made some organizational changes. We took on mobile phone support in IT. Formerly, that was fiscal. But that was really more of a technology. Nobody was really happy the way that it lived in fiscal, because it should have been a technology thing for a long time. We finally did that. And then more recently, we took on support for our Advantage 4, which is our CGI environment. So that now lives in IT. So I think that just makes a little bit more streamlined support process for our customers. I'm not going to talk anymore about IT security, but we continue to improve and enhance where we can. I mentioned OnBase earlier, our document management system. Some of the highlights there, we rolled out the agenda management module, which all of you are using. That's kind of one of the more recent ones. We did a client intake process at Veteran Services. Operation Paperless for the Clerk's Office on 17th Circuit is a huge paperless initiative they are undergoing right now. And they are going to go entirely paperless. They're getting ready to launch civil cases here in the next month or so. That has been a huge effort on their part with support by us. DocuSign is our electronic signature package. We've increased that usage, so we're trying to get rid of those paper signatures, the wet signatures. Some of these forms are public facing, so that is helping the public as well in terms of our ability to deliver services across the county. Within the corporate counsel's office, we replaced their legal matter, legal tracking software with an OnBase solution. And then within HR, we moved open enrollment to OnBase as well. So kind of just those iterative improvements that we're making with OnBase, with some big projects sprinkled in there. But again, looking back to all that increase in OnBase usage we've seen, that's where we're headed. So I mentioned the EOC participation. So Scott Corbin reached out. So IT now, county IT is formally involved in the Emergency Operations Center. There's a cyber annex in the giant binder of emergency response about how do we respond as a county to cyber attack if the EOC is activated. We actually walked through an exercise with them last fall, and we're going to continue that again this year. So we're excited about that. And that has made us really better from a process management internally as well. Wireless network upgrade activities, that continues. Continue to reduce costs across the board, whether it's our hardware platforms or software where we can. Again, more audit and regulatory compliance support for various departments. Support of the new website launch over to kentcountymi.gov. And then lastly, on this slide, we did launch our own private AI, artificial intelligence implementation in the government cloud with Copilot. So we are taking some very initial tentative steps into that space. So, and where we go from here, well, we've got 50 projects on the books for various departments. Some of those we talked about, some of the others we didn't, but they are really across the spectrum. Projects are increasingly complex. An interesting one is that we just got involved in was like the jail key management program. They put out an RFP for new key management, and you wouldn't think that as a technology component because it's just keys. But there's a wireless component. It's pretty fascinating, but it just goes to show that anything going on around the county's got a technology aspect to it. So we like to be involved in that. It's fun when you come to work on it. You never knew what you're going to get involved in on a daily basis, but lots of projects going on out there. Continued expansion of security landscape. Incoming requests for service do outpace capacity. I know you're talking about new positions coming up here in a little bit. We do have a position request out there, so hopefully this helps set the stage for that discussion a little bit, but we're busy. In the GIS area, we have a LiDAR refresh. So LiDAR is the imaging piece that basically provides contours, 2-foot contours across the county. So we hope to fly that next spring, a year from now. We are waiting for potentially some federal grant assistance on that to help pay for it. But that is one of our more public-facing things we do in IT is GIS services. So this is our 10-year refresh for this. Looking forward to getting that done. Audit remediation again. Various paperless initiatives will continue. We don't see that slowing down. In fact, we see it speeding up. Cost reduction efforts never go away. AI, that's not AL, it's AI. We always get confused when we see AL appear on a slide. We're not taking a cautionary approach to AL, although that might be something we should look at. But anyway, that cautionary approach I talked about earlier is what does it really mean to us? How do we use it? How do we protect ourselves from it? We can't stop it. Initially, everybody said, we got to stop it. And then talking with our peers, it's like, well, you can't stop it. So you're going to have to adopt this cautionary use, educate users on the responsible use of it, and realize there are a lot of efficiencies and benefits to be gained from it. So that's kind of the approach we're taking. The admin building, the future location, I think that's exciting from a technology perspective. One of the things we suffer from right now is not all county buildings operate the same. When you look at conference room technology, video conferencing technologies, I think this is an opportunity to start to standardize across some of that, at least in a new building. I think that's exciting. End user work habits. One size no longer fits all. It used to be, 5 years ago, you came to the county, you got a phone, you got a laptop, and you went to work. And that's really changed. The workforce is changing. The demographic is changing. I think expectations are changing. I have a vision of a bring your own device, right? Where we don't care what you bring in, you can just use it, right? And because that's the way you like to work. And I think that's the future. Private sector is doing it. Universities are already doing it. Government will have to get there at some point, I do believe. But one size no longer fits all. So how do we adapt to that? The future of 17th Circuit Court case management is a big one for us. They use a case management software called CourtView, which is now the oldest thing we run. It's almost 25 years old. we're going to have to do something with it at some point. But we continue to kind of get mixed messages from the state on what we should be doing, when we should moving to their online case management. The tight integration we have with OnBase doesn't help that discussion. We're probably years away from it, quite honestly. But what do we do in the meantime? So that one is one that keeps us up at night sometimes. And then lastly, the pace of cloud adoption here. It's really easy to go out and find software that fills a specific niche, and that's great. But at some point, it rolls back to us because it's got to connect to something. They want to integrate it with a data source of some type, and then we get involved. And so it's not as easy or as fast as people sometimes think to adopt cloud services. It's easy to pay the invoice when it rolls in, but what happens on the back end? So. All right, so none of that happens without a lot of work by a lot of people. That's certainly, we got a great IT staff. We've got 42 passionate, dedicated people. I've got great leadership. Janice Rockburn was our old deputy director. She retired last September. That was a big hole to fill. Mary Beth Van Til has accepted that role, and she's been doing a great job. We've got other great leadership in the IT department. And we really enjoy the success as a result of that. We get great support across the county from department directors. If I need something, if we want to have a discussion, we just pick up the phone and call, or we use Teams, because that's what people do now. But it works, and it works well, and I really like the way IT is positioned in the county. I like the visibility we have. I like the relationships we build. And then lastly, county staff. County staff have shown an incredible ability to adopt and change culture. We're seeing it at 17th Circuit Court with Operation Paperless. We've seen it with Ring Central a few years ago. We see it every day with their phishing attempts and their willingness to report things that maybe are suspicious, maybe not, but just to be sure, they're doing it. And we wouldn't be successful without that. So we really appreciate that as well. So how about some questions?
All right, thank
That
you,
was a lot of
Tim.
words. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured that you had a lot to put in there. I was going to have Dee Jones start coaching folks on how to get a lot in a short amount of time. So he seems to nail it every time. Commissioners, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation this morning, Tim. I got a text saying the live stream audio was fixed as you walked up, so.
I did it right here. I did it while we
You
were-
did the trick, so. I appreciate the presentation and being so related to kind of my day job career. I understand 100% of the words you're using and all of the details, and so I just want to assure my colleagues who may not know all the acronyms and all the things here. We have a very well-run IT department, and the extra emphasis, that extra percentage of spend on security, in my view, is well worth it. Like, that's extremely important and becoming more and more difficult as the years go by. So a couple just specific questions for you. One, I saw in the website policy we're considering in a little bit something about compliance with SOC 2 principles, which I'm way more familiar with SOC 2 than I wish I was. But I'm curious, do we actually do a SOC 2 audit, or is that just kind of the standard we apply to make sure we're appropriately handling access control and all of that?
Yeah, it's really the latter, right? It's really kind of that framework like I talked about earlier that we try to operate under. We do have some SOC 2 requirements for cloud-based services that do provide an annual report that they actually are audited. But internally, we do not undergo a SOC audit, no.
Okay.
And just a comment, Matt, it's a good question. How about acronyms? It's really hard to develop an IT presentation without overuse of some sort of acronym. It is very difficult, so I did my best, but I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, I thought it was great. My other curiosity is the interest among county employees and the demand you've seen on that private AI, the Copilot-based AI. I'm just curious if you've got any statistics on that, but also how you see it evolving, what the typical usage of LLMs is going to be, say, in 5 years.
Yeah, I wish I could look out 5 years, but you can't. We've seen a lot of use of like the publicly available chat GPTs, right, for working more efficiently. How do I craft an email, right, or something like that? How do I develop an RFP? Those types of things. So we've seen good use of it in that regards. Our own instance, our kind of that private foray I talked about in Microsoft Copilot is in the government cloud. And so there are some security restrictions out there that we've struggled with a little bit because by design, it's more secure than the publicly available LLMs like ChatGPT. And so we've had a little bit of frustration. Well, I can't do that here yet. Well, no, you can't by design. And we continue to really explore what that means. And it's been limiting a little bit, but I will say that I think there is a good cautionary attitude among our staff about using it and keeping that human in the chain, right? That it isn't going to solve all your problems, it makes you better, but you still have to be the one to take a look at it, right? So, does that help? I can't
Yes.
look out 5 years. I don't know
Yeah.
what we're going to be.
No,
So-
that is very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. I appreciate everybody's expertise on this commission and this board. It seems everybody's got passions and things they're experts in. So again, I really appreciate that, especially one with technology. I just want it to work. So I appreciate everything you do. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tim, I'm going to jump off at Commissioner Coleman's conversation on AI and really think about, as we are developing AI policies for county staff, LLMs tend to only be as good as the data that's fed into them, right? They're not actually intelligent. They're just dealing with lots and lots of data, which of course puts us in a little bit of a dilemma of, do we want a high quality use of that tool or do we want something that is more secure? So I'm curious how you all have been having conversations around the value of those tools balanced with the privacy of the kind of information that we might feed into those tools related to the kind of data that we want to keep close by to us.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if I understand it, we're talking about governance, right? And really that is where amongst ourselves and amongst our peers, we struggle a little bit because I think sometimes when you govern it so tightly, you never get anywhere, right? But in a case like this where you've got data potentially leaking out to the public, it's extremely important that you do it. And so I will say that we're a little bit at a crossroads of trying to govern it so tightly it just collapses under its own weight versus the actual good, the good and responsible use of it. And I don't have any answers. I know we've got a draft policy for AI usage, but it's really about protecting county data at this point, right? Don't use your county credentials, right? Sanitize that document before you feed it in. Excuse me, that kind of responsible usage is really where we're sitting right now. And I think the larger governance of this group of people getting together and talk about data warehousing, data lake or data swamp as they're calling it now. That's still lurking out there is the best way to say it. We're not quite sure how to tackle that just yet without it collapsing and just becoming more of a hindrance than a benefit.
Yeah, that's really useful, and that's related to my other question, which is I took note of the fact that 90% of our servers are virtual, and you then also had a comment in your presentation around when virtual servers are communicating county data to each other without us even.
Yep.
So I'm just, there's a lot of conversation right now about data privacy at the federal level, and I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit more about how we, knowing that there's some stuff we can't say in an open meeting, right? How are we making sure that when the public is entering data into the system that might not be stored, right? There's only a 1 in 10 chance that it's stored on something that we physically have on site.
Right.
How are we making sure that those data are protected in a way that the county can feel comfortable?
Yeah, there's a couple of different points on that. One is, I think just, you saw the slides on IT security is we're very purposeful and intentional about doing it. And I think we've got great relationships built with departments that say, hey, we're interested in doing this. And they don't necessarily view security anymore as an obstacle to getting things done, but more of a, hey, we need to be brought into the conversation because they get it too, right? And so I think there's that awareness that county departments get it, that it's an important too. The other thing that we rely heavily on is the multitude of audits and regulatory compliance that we live under on a daily basis. And really, it's across the board. It's criminal justice policy, it's IRS policy, it's PCI compliance for credit cards, right? There's differing layers of regulatory stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. And I think that makes us better because it's all about protection of that information. And a lot of those policies overlap, right? If you're talking about HIPAA or criminal justice, a lot of that overlaps. And so I think really those two things combined probably give us the best leverage in terms of data protection.
That's useful. And I've got one final question, Mr. Chair, if that might be all right. I noticed that you talked about DocuSign and the increased use of DocuSign. In our policy that Commissioner Coleman alluded to that we're about to talk about after this, we have a section about translation and the use of translation tools. How much does IT support the translation of documents in particular for public-facing needs? I'm thinking, for instance, a community member comes in and they are filling out a document at the clerk's office, but it's not in their native language. Does IT help with that, or is that something? And the reason this is relevant, we had a conversation at Standing Rules last week about how we are providing contextually appropriate translation services for our county individuals.
Yeah, it's a good question. We really don't. When we have a need that we would publish a form or something public-facing or in DocuSign that would need to be translated, we would generally work with the department who is kind of sponsoring that initiative and working with us to have the translation kind of done and approved. So, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Pacla. Commissioner Ponstein.
Well, unlike these two, I'm not a huge hurrah for technology and that. So, in a broader sense, and maybe a little bit different take on this, county government, any governmental unit, we deal with people, and we're here to serve people. And it's always nice to hear someone that had a kind of interaction with like an airline or a big business, and you're talking to an AI-generated voice. You can text and it's an AI-generated text back to you. And there's a level of frustration there. And I see that, every step that we're going down this IT AI trail, it takes us further and further from face-to-face contact. Are there any studies out there or anything you folks look at that maybe the results of all this IT, the results that we're delivering to people are starting to fall off?
I wouldn't say we're looking at specific studies as it relates to AI interaction and general levels of satisfaction with the public, because I'm not aware on the county we're doing a lot of that yet. I think our use of AI is generally internally facing to develop documents and those types of things rather than anything truly public facing. We are using AI internally right now on kind of a case-by-case basis. If you think of chatbots, right, asking a website a question, we're doing that internally for some staff with manuals. So, but it's for them, it's not for the general public. So I am not aware of anything that, like I said, is AI that is public facing that we're providing services yet.
Maybe to narrow it down a little bit, so I'm seeing more and more that the courts, which are probably the biggest disagreement between people and government on how well we're doing, we're relying more and more Zoom, email, everything sent in documents. And for most court cases, they're very emotional. And you've got a lot of details. And I've been getting calls where the time to resolve a problem, and I'll use this one for example, someone's been trying to clear up a divorce hearing for going on five years. And they finally found when the judge, during a Zoom meeting, and they've only met face-to-face once in these 5 years, realized that someone was lying. And he accused both of the people and the lawyers of part of that. But what he completely missed in this, and probably would have been caught in a hearing face-to-face, that what was wrong was the tax document. And, I'm hearing growing frustration all about it, and praises of trying to get through things quicker and less staff time and all that. But I still think, and the courts are the one that I'm hearing from the most, that people are not satisfied with the level of service because we're moving away from the one-on-one. So.
Yeah, I think it's a good observation, and I think what we've seen around the county, especially in the judicial community, is that it varies based on judge and courtroom. But I will say that kind of anecdotally, that rush that we all had to Zoom and Teams back in the COVID days, I think we're starting to back off a little bit, because I think we are starting to realize that we are using that human contextual interfacing that we are historically used to. I do notice, again, around the county that, hey, it used to be, hey, I'll dial you up on Teams, but now it's more, hey, I'll walk down the street. Right, because I think we're getting back to that. I know that's a little bit anecdotal, and I don't have a lot of data to support that, but I think just in the daily cadence of working at the county, I think we're seeing more and more getting back to that. I don't know how that translates to the public. I do know there has been frustration in the judicial community, simply because there doesn't seem to be a standard way that they're doing it. But I guess I can't comment on any more than that. Yeah.
Commissioner Womack.
Good morning again.
Great presentation. As we move to a fuller complex, how seamless will this be, and is there going to be opportunity for upgrades? Are there any champions?
Yes to all of that. I think, like I said earlier, I think it would be exciting, because really, we sort of have an ad hoc approach, the way we do things on a technology basis in county facilities, based on the type of that facility and what their needs are. But I think if you look at what is possible to do in conference rooms, what is possible to do with wireless, I think it's interesting to continue to change our workforce a little bit. It used to be you'd go into a conference room and nobody took a laptop, right? But now everybody does, right? If you don't have a laptop in a conference room, you're kind of the odd person out, right? But continuing down that path, I think, is exciting. But also making it more user-friendly for people, right? I think that's key for us, is that, hey, if I want to use that technology, if I want to reserve a conference room, they seem like little things, but when you add them up cumulatively, it adds a lot. But I think we have to be careful we don't get over our skis on that thing too, right? I mean, I think we have a strong history of being fiscally responsible, and what makes sense. I was talking about fit of technology, and I think that's key for us. But I think we would be remiss not to consider doing some more unique things if we certainly had that opportunity. Does that help?
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for that insight.
You're welcome.
All right, any other commissioners? All right, seeing none, thank you, Tim, appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you for your staff and everything that you do to keep the county technologically safe, so appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
All right, next item on our agenda is brought to us by the Administrator's Office. This is Information Technology Policy. This is a action request. This is at $0 cost to the county. Do I have a motion and support, please? Motion by Pakla, supported by Commissioner Womack. Commissioners, comments, questions? Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alan, just curious about this line in here about in case of emergency, the county administrator controller has the authority to modify or waive. Is that a standard sort of boilerplate language that we put into a resolution like this? Or is there something related to this that's special? Okay, thank you.
This probably relates to our previous discussion, but I was a little surprised to see in the policy and guidelines that we weren't more explicit about sort of our approach to AI on the website, or related to that, maybe some upcoming opportunities with the website. I don't know if we currently handle any financial transactions with our current website, but that seems to be another area where it would be good to specify some sort of policy. So it might not be this iteration, but just thinking forward, and would love to know what consideration went into those two topics.
I can get one, and I'll have, well, let me try both, and then Tim, you can jump in. But first with AI, I think it's just a matter of it's so new that we're learning as we go, we're adapting, and I think you will see more specificity in this as we move into the AI world more and more. As far as the other, we had a payment engine, we're one of the earliest counties in the state to develop a payment engine for access contact, and I think we looked at that already. And so, yes, we do have a number of financial transactions that happen over that. So, Tim, feel free to add to that.
Yeah, I don't know if I would add a lot. I think your timing is right, Al. It was around 2000, I think we started, but I think we currently run 53 online payment applications through through KentCountyMI.gov today, across the board, from dog licensing to, you name it.
And Tim, what would the reason be that it's not at this time?
I would probably have to talked to Lori on that a little bit. I thought we had a different policy, at least in draft form, as it related to online payments, because there's also a discussion there about convenience fees and things like that. So it's a follow-up item.
All right, any other commissioners' comments, questions? If not, Commissioner Coleman.
Just a quick one on, so I know with consolidation to kentcountymi.gov, some separate websites are kind of consolidated into the one, but I did notice that it just says we'll maintain a website, but in the past, we've had, multiple websites operated by Kent County. Does this policy apply to any website operated by Kent County or just kentcountymi.gov?
You are correct in the sense we continue to collapse a number of, let's call it domains, but sites, yes, into Kent County MI. That will continue. So the intent is that eventually we're all going to be one.
Got it, thank you.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? If not, all those in favor, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed, please say no. That item has been approved. All right, next item on our agenda is brought to us by the Administrator's Office. This is an action request. They approve the 2025 federal and state legislative priorities. Can I have a motion, please, and support? Motion by Commissioner Womack, supported by Commissioner Faber. Commissioners, comments, questions, concerns? Commissioner Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the legislative priorities to remove the section titled Protect Farmland Preservation Tax Credits for Kent County Farmers.
All right, do I have support on that? I have a support by Commissioner DeBoer. Commissioners, comments, questions, or concerns? Commissioner Womack.
Just have a question to see if Commissioner Coleman could give us a little more information on the motion.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've obviously been long opposed to the existing system of farmland preservation and how it works and how it operates. But so certainly that is a motivating factor. But I do feel like this is kind of an arcane item, that the Public Act 116 tax credits. It's pretty minor, and I feel like it kind of diminishes some of the other items within the legislative priorities. And if this item's removed, I'd be supportive of the whole legislative priorities.
All right, any other? Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. So, yeah, it is very narrow scope of an issue, and I tend to somewhat believe that maybe a better thing is, the protection of farmland in general, and what we do to support and make it a viable, productive industry for the state, which I think we all know food security is going to probably be one of the top issues in the next 10, 20 years. We only have to look at Hart, Michigan, where a 700-acre asparagus farm was sold at auction, and the winner was Consumers Power to put a solar farm there. And the farmers there that wanted to keep it farmed were pretty much given the message by consumers is that, we're here today and we've got authorization to go as high as we have to get this. And it's stuff like that that's more and more of viable farmland. That same solar could have been done on rooftops or in parking lots. The threats to farmland preservation aren't the tax credits. It's, other government entities, a lot of times the neighbor that lives on the property next to it. So I would be more comfortable with a more broad statement about policies toward Kent County farmland. We've got one of the most unique growing sites in the nation, that ridge that grows apples. I think we're number 2 in the country. So, yeah, it's a difficult issue, and it always comes down to is, how to protect it. But, what the state's doing right now isn't protecting it. I ran into a USDA rep at the national conference, and they were talking about the importance of solar, and, that's easy, quick way to do it. And I just asked the simple question that instead of when you purchase a whole farm that's highly productive, that has the USDA ever looked at, well, I've got 1,000 acres as a farmer, 800 of it's really productive. Maybe I'd like to carve off 100 acres and let's put a solar farm there and then make it a lease to the farmer to help them ensure that the profitable part of the farm stays in existence. I mean, there's a lot of things we can talk about, but yeah, I tend to agree that this is very targeted. I don't think the threat to farmland is the 116 Act or tax credits. I think it's a bigger issue than that, and that kind of takes away from the importance of having a legislative priority of protecting farmland. So, thanks.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. I have consistently been against PDRs, and it's not because I don't want to protect farmland. I think Commissioner Ponstein and I have a lot more in common than we do different. It's mostly, my hang-up is just tax credits that are public going towards something that, in my consideration, is private, where the public is not allowed to participate in something with that public dollars. So I will be voting in support of the amendment, but I also appreciate things that we could do or considerations to protect farmland in the future without necessarily using public dollars for it.
Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Noting a process piece here, this item was not in the draft legislative priorities that came out on the 27th. And so typically when we have changes to the priorities, it comes about because there was either an issue or because it was a thought from a commissioner in that request for feedback. Wondering if we can get a little bit more information about this particular legislative priority as it was added in and the scope of the concern here.
Lori, do you mind talking about Josh with this, please?
Sure. Just want to bring my computer in case forget some of the details. So this actually came from our Ag Preservation Board. So this is an issue that's affecting the entire state. So what happened is so PA 116 is not in jeopardy, actually. It's going to stay. What's in jeopardy are those tax credits for properties that were already protected under a county program, which the county does have a program. So those farmers participated in a county PDR program, believing that those, and up until last year, that was the case. Those tax credits are available for that property. It's still protected. It's just permanent instead of temporary under the state's program. MDARD has changed their ruling on that, and that only the PA 116 agreements that they hold are eligible for tax credits, and they're starting to say that the property that was protected under the PDR program is not part of that, which jeopardizes, and so these farmers depend on, the farmers that we're talking with, this is quite a significant hit to those farmers who lose those tax credits without any notice, or now they can't put their program back in PA 116. It's a permanent easement, so it really jeopardizes the viability of that farm. And that, for that reason, the Ag Preservation Board wanted that to be a priority for the county so that we can just either get the rule change back within MDARD so that those farmers that protected their farm under our county program aren't harmed, or a legislative fix that would just clarify that is in fact eligible. So that's where that came from, and once we did that, then there was an agreement to add that on the draft priorities and have a discussion about it.
And Josh, these tax credits, these are property tax credits? These are?
Correct, yeah. So the property taxes are capped for farmers, and you have to meet a income threshold and things like that. But so it's not for kind of big commercial farms, but really the small family farms, the ones that are protected under our PDR program. Again, according to them, I haven't seen all the math behind it. It is a significant hit to what is already slim margins for our local farmers.
And can you walk me through sort of the future casting of this, right? So let's say that this doesn't happen, this legislative priority goes in the direction that in the draft priorities we don't want it to go. Those farmers take a hit on the property taxes. They are paying more in property taxes than what they thought at the time of entering the PDR program. But that property is still under a permanent easement.
Correct.
So what happens in the individual farmer's perspective, right? I mean, I'm thinking about what's the individual impact here.
Yeah.
They had a promise from the program that this was going to be the case.
There could be some really hard decisions, and it's possible maybe that property does not get farmed, but it still remains preserved under an easement. It's really hard to say because it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but I also imagine that's farmers are probably going to be less likely to agree to put their property under a PDR program in the future, but that doesn't help the properties that are already protected under all the county programs.
And can you remind me the number of properties inside of Kent County that are protected by the PDR?
Yeah, you know what, I should.
Or just scale,
know
right? I
off
mean,
the
is it
top of
tens,
my head.
hundreds?
Yeah, I think we're at like 13 or 14, somewhere around 2,500 acres.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I might just, continue on comment here. I recognize that, we are a deliberative body that's here to develop these priorities. I can't in good conscience vote to remove this from the legislative priorities because this would unduly impact a number of county residents. And I think this is a separate issue from thinking about the PDR program in perpetuity going forward. To me, this is a promise that we made as a county, that the state made as a government to these individuals, and to go back on that promise and remove their protections from the tax abatement that they thought they were going to get. I just can't support that.
Thank you. I think, we have any more first rounds? I think Commissioner Womack, okay. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thanks, Chair Burrow. So just a follow-up with Josh up there. The only thing I want to highlight is that somehow it's always the farmland that's using tax credits to be beneficial. I mean, we've got to look at our whole taxation system. Tax increment financing district, give direct tax credits to businesses. 198s, even downtown development authorities, those take money from taxes to support the business community. The playing field's got to be leveled. I mean, if we're going to be doing it for businesses, it shouldn't be wrong to do it for farms. And if we're doing it for farms, it should be wrong for businesses. I mean, our whole tax policy in this state needs a overhaul. And it's got to level the playing field. And, I would love to see someday just all property taxes eliminated, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen in my lifetime, so.
Commissioner Womack.
Just want to take an opportunity to thank the colleagues that supported guardianship being a part of that package for issues to watch, as we've had some citizens come out, and just want to continue to do what I can to support green space, support our farmers, and the fact that we have 300 different crops that can be grown in Michigan. And in my community, even spending $50 at a grocery store just can take up to an hour and a half because of the price comparison and the impact that inflation has had on food and things like that. So even though that's a little separate from the PDR, still the green space and the urban sprawl, and as much as I support developers, I know I only moved back to Michigan because of the farmland and what really makes Michigan, Michigan. And so just still want to thank all our colleagues too for all that extra information on this motion. Thank you.
All right, is there any other commissioner comments or questions? Again, I'm not, as my votes in the past have shown, I'm not a PDR growth person. I don't think that, like Commissioner Coleman and DeBoer, it's not a spot for our tax dollars to be going. I do have some concerns with our current farmers that are in that program, right, that I didn't necessarily support at the time if I voted on those. However, they did go into those programs thinking and realizing that those tax credits would be there. Again, if it's not in support of growth in the program, but supporting our current farmers that are in that program, I can get behind that for that reason. So Josh, again, just to be reaffirmed, right, this is for our current folks that are in this program. There's no growth that we're looking at.
Correct. Those are the ones that they can't make a different decision now, right? Every other application that's submitted now, they have this choice of whether or not to put it in the program. But though it's actually 19 farms, but around 2,500 acres, they cannot go back and reverse that decision now. So they are stuck if that rule doesn't change.
All right. Commissioner Coleman, our administrator, has a
Thank you,
follow-up
Mr.
as
Chair. This is helpful information to kind of learn the details behind why this was added. And while I certainly continue to view and maybe a reinforced, view with the confusion here about the existing PDR program not being a good solution to accomplishing farmland preservation. But that being said, it still seems to me, while I'd be supportive of those existing 19 farms, having, the continuation of the tax credit that they understood that they were getting, I think that makes sense. So the question that remains, though, is does an issue that impacts like 19 families rise to the level of entering our legislative priorities? If it does, then there's certainly a bunch of issues that aren't here that ought to be. So if an issue of that small consequence rises to the level of legislative priorities, I think we should vastly expand the list.
Al?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I was actually here when the board approved the PDR program, and while the tax credit is significant, the main argument for it came from farmers on the ridge. I remember in particular one, maybe two families that were 4 to 5 generation farmers that were not thinking they'd be able to leave their farm to a 4th or 5th generation because the land was being assessed at development or highest and best use, which in many cases was development value and not ag value. So I think that was a significant benefit that would remain, not to downplay the value of the tax credits, but I just wanted to mention that the assessing the property at ag value was also a big piece.
All right, any other commissioners' comments, questions, or concerns? On the amendment. On the amendment. So a yes is to vote for Commissioner Coleman's amendment. A no is to vote against, and then we'll go back to the original priorities. All right, everybody clear? All right, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no.
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 All right, so now we will go back to the original priorities. And the amendment failed. Right, there were 2 yeses and 5 noes. Okay. All right. Back to our legislative priorities. We already had a motion and support on that, I believe, and Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I think was just the perfect example of my comment right here, I am curious about how we might be a little bit more transparent with the development of these priorities. Just sort of speaking as to my experience here, the first time that I saw these priorities was at the executive committee meeting that I was observing on the 27th. Later that day, we all got an email asking for review of those legislative priorities. And then here we are finalizing these to send up to the board ostensibly at the next meeting. I think there's a little bit of confusion around what should be the process of developing those priorities, because this board right here, this committee, is by standing rules, the committee that is developing those and forwarding them onto the board. So what I think I'm asking is, as we are moving forward, I hope that we can have a clear and communicated process. Maybe it's as specific as a timeline, maybe it's just some better level of understanding as we're getting into the flow of these new committees, as to how we are developing this. Because as Commissioner Kallman, noted, if the threshold of creating something on the legislative priorities is that it's impacting somebody in Kent County, we would have a 5,000-page document here, right? If the threshold is that it's forwarded by some commissioner, then that's a different level of threshold. If the threshold is that there is one of our boards, as we heard from the Ag Preservation Board here, that's highlighting an issue, I think that's an important thing for us to know, as we are the committee that is tasked with developing and then forwarding those legislative priorities. So I don't have any changes to these because, I shopped around to my colleagues, and there's nothing on here that we think rises to the level of this, or at least that I heard. But I am curious about how we might in the future have better clarity on that process going forward.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein. Thank you, Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. And just to add on to that, maybe we should define what our lobbyists are doing. I would hope that if an issue came up tomorrow and we're not meeting, and it needs to be addressed, that the relationship with staff and the lobbyists would be advocating for that, and maybe just have a broad scope things of when we get involved, I don't want to say against the state, but disagreeing with the state, I guess is a better word, on an issue, that what is the process to get our lobbyists involved? And if it's not in the legislative priorities, is it hands-off then? So just clarifications, and maybe a redo of how we picture our legislative priorities. Instead of a list, we can do something else like, the value to the county. So thanks.
Oh, good. Thank you, Commissioner Ponstein. Commissioner Womack.
Yeah, just wanted to echo Commissioner Pacla, that I think the process is very important. And I just want to thank Commissioner Kallman for making the motion, because in that discussion, we discovered a lot. I seldom vote against Commissioner Kallman's great motion. And I just feel the fact that he said it affects, 19 families is very important for us to look at when it comes to priorities. But as Josh said, if these families opted in believing they were going to get something, people in the future may feel a little less trust in the government. So that was one of the reasons I voted for it. But I just want to thank Commissioner Kallman for the motion, because it was definitely worthy of a discussion and very educational for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Womack. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? All right, Commissioner Kallman.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the three previous comments about the process and just clarity on the process of developing these and what makes it and what doesn't. And I just want to thank the committee for considering my amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Kallman. Commissioner Faber.
Yeah, just reiterating Commissioner Pacla, I mean, our current standing rules really lay out a 5-step process before this goes to the board, including going out to other entities, et cetera. To do that, we're going to need a longer timeline. And my understanding is with the state moving some of their appropriation requests and things forward, as well as other changes, that's all pushing up. So I feel like this is almost, we're going to approve this potentially approve this as a Board of Commissioners, and then we're almost going to have to start right in on 2026 priorities in order to start to get in a rhythm where these things can be approved probably in January of 2026 to give us the lead time to follow our current standing rules. That's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Faber. Commissioner Pacla.
Yeah, a real brief second. I was hoping to have confirmation that we, as we are looking at these legislative priorities, pay attention to potential conflicts of interest that exist within the Board of Commissioners as we're thinking about the kinds of things that we are using county resources for. Is that true that this would be subject to the same level of conflict of interest policy as any other board action that we're doing? I see a nod from Linda.
Well,
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? I appreciate the feedback. I'll work with Chair Green as well. Perhaps our first meeting in January, we did not have enough on the agenda to make it worthwhile to spend your time coming here or staff's time. Perhaps we could look at something a little different, a work session type thing with a couple of our lobbyists, see where we need to go with some things, but we can tweak those things. Obviously, we have a divided state government right now, so again, our priorities have to be very general and brief where we can, get something done on that. But yes, we can definitely look at that going forward in that process. I would encourage that, who's our lead person right now? I know we got to hire for the Board of Commissioners. I don't know if it's Lisa right now. I don't know if it's, who that person is to add more work to. But as we have maybe some different priorities, as we have some different ideas, that maybe we're keeping a running list, right? And as more commissioners have the same comments, we can have those discussions. So it comes up on us really fast, and then all of a sudden we're put on the spot, and we're umming and ahhing and wondering about what we put on these priorities. So perhaps we just, again, keep a running list as we're going through the year. Again, with our 4-year cycles, I think we'll have hopefully this dialed in as we go. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the legislative priorities, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed? No. All right, that has been approved. Next item on our agenda is brought to us by Human Resources. This is additional positions, and this is an action request. Do I have a motion and support? I have a motion by Pacla, and do I have support?
Support.
Supported by Womack. Commissioners, comments, questions, or concerns? Commissioner Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, I move to amend what we're approving today to not include the final 5 line items in the list. I think our clerk this morning has some printed copies of what that looks like in terms of adjustment.
All right, bear with me too as I also pull my agenda back up. My computer went to sleep here, so I want to see those items. All right, so what you have here, Commissioner Coleman, is there's 3 sheriff positions, circuit court and probate court. It is your motion to include those as additional positions. That is correct? Okay. And you would exclude, there's 2 brought to you from the administration, which is the housing grants analyst, assistant corporate counsel, human resource, the senior human resource specialist, an IT administrator, and a parks manager. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct. Thank you,
So,
Mr. Chair.
yep, we have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Coleman to amend the positions to include the 3 sheriff positions, the circuit court, and a probate court. Do I have support? Support by DeBoer. Do we have questions and concerns? Commissioner,
our belts here, government, and so this is to ultimately benefit our community in terms of
That we narrowed down, or that the committee narrowed down to these 15.7 FTEs? 15.7 FTEs?
Good morning. The total request was for 30.2 FTEs.
Okay, thank you.
3.2 FTEs.
Okay, thank you. And then, Al, it's not intended that by requesting these FTEs,
Continues to be robust, partly because we're typically the fastest growing county in the state, projections.
and just to follow up on that, the reduction of about $500,000 from a position request would not lower the amount of revenue that we would be generating, right?
No.
all right, commissioners, Commissioner Womack?
Yes, it's a great time to be supporting some of these positions. Is anyone available that can give us any information on some of these positions? And would like some information on the youth specialist, something definitely seems to be needed. Or if that's already something we have, that gives a little more information on these positions
All right,
and how
so,
they help with public safety.
thank you, Commissioner Womack. Let's do we have any other commissioners' comments? Because I was going to have Al asked to say a few things, and we can ask some of these department heads some of these questions as well.
Sure. I think that each one of these position requests has a different fact set, and so I think it would be at least good to hear the different department heads and judge that have come out this morning to speak on behalf of those. I can start with administration. The housing and grants analyst is a position we predicted when we recommended the authority. Ultimately, we believe this position will pay for itself because it will do the basically the heavy reporting that's required for housing projects that are paid for using TIF funds. Expanded the use of TIF to include housing. Assistant Corporation Counsel 2 expands an existing half-time position to full. And then Senior Human Resources Specialist. When the Great Recession hit, we cut, or the county cut, I should say, since I wasn't here, HR by 7 positions. 2 have been replaced by technology. I think we've added 2 back. And so really, we're still 3 down from when the Great Recession hit in 2008. And that does show in their work, especially in training. And of course, at the same time, we're facing some of the more challenging. Mr. Chair, it may be good just to have each speak a minute or two about why they asked for the position.
All right, so yes, if we can have, again, please keep it very brief, because if it goes too long, I will probably cut you off. Not probably, I will. But if we can have each of those folks come up and give maybe a 60-second quick answer, and then commissioners can have some comments or ask some questions. Yeah, Linda, yes, please.
Just for the commissioner's information, this is an attorney to deal with capacity for 3 years. So what this does, and that's why you see the 2 different numbers there, this turns the temp into a permanent at a fraction of the cost of what we would have to do to spend on the outside. The hourly wage here at the county is good, and it's public service to our community, but we spend a whole lot more if we have to send it out to private firms. So this takes a 3-year run at a temp, which proved that we needed the extra capacity, turns it into a less than full-time, but permanent employee.
Thank you, that helps. Amy?
Yeah, so Al kind of provided the big picture for HR. We took as did most departments, had a significant reduction in HR staffing, and we've been slowly, whether we need to add the staff back or whether we can use technology or restructuring work or outsourcing to meet the needs just as effectively. We have basically hodgepodge compensation together. We have different people in HR, they each have a little piece of it, and nobody really holistically is looking at the systems that help us to manage one of the largest costs that we have. Our costs for general fund payroll is well over $100 million, and I believe would pay for itself by properly putting together comprehensive systems to manage that cost. Also, customer service is really lacking. The average wait time for departments that want a classification audit is approximately 5 months, just because we have people who are busy doing other things and they're trying to fit these compensation responsibilities.
Commissioner Pacla.
So then if I might continue, whenever I am assessing a motion to table, I think to myself, is there information that I could get between now and the next time that would meaningfully change my decision-making process in this? And for me personally, the answer is no. We're talking about potentially getting additional information about these position requests. We've been receiving information about these position requests for close to a month at this point in time. We've all had opportunities to engage with questions. We've all had opportunities to highlight concerns about the budgetary impact to these requests. So for me personally, I don't see any information that I would get that would lead me to have additional information to consider this motion right here. So I'll be voting no on the motion to table.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Coleman.
On the motion to table, I think I would prefer to vote through the 11 that we seem to all agree should go through and consider the others. But since that option isn't really before us, I'll be supporting the motion to table because I do think that there has been raised some good information gathering questions from Chair Burrell and on just some of the particulars of some of the positions, and also from Commissioner DeBoer on the overall expansion of positions here at Kent County. I recall when I started on this board a decade ago that we had somewhere just under 1,800 positions. I know we're now over 2,000 positions, but I would be interested to see maybe a shorter time frame, like the last 5 years or so. Where have we increased positions, and primarily the number of positions? I think the budgetary impact would be interesting as well. But just where have those positions been added? Because overall, I think most of those additions have been good and necessary things. But to get a more holistic picture, I think that it would be useful to see that comparison in detail.
All right. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? All right. Again, just having the last word. Again, I would still like to see this get tabled and that we get some of that additional information on that. So that being said,
Motion to table to April 15th meeting.
this is a motion to table to our next ops meeting, which is April 15th. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to
We have a
table?
request for a roll call, I think.
Did we have a roll call on this one?
The roll call was for the underlying reconsideration.
All right, so we have,
Just for clarification, I mean, we're tabling an amendment, so I guess I'm not following what all is gonna happen when we bring it back. We're gonna be discussing the amendment again, or I mean, because the one passed and now it doesn't, but
my understanding would be, and Linda could correct me if I'm wrong, is that there'd be additional information that those positions that we could gather from those positions or from those leaders in those departments. At that point in time, we could either amend those positions if we still didn't agree that all of them were acceptable to us. Couldn't we still amend that?
So what is actually on the table that would be tabled till April 15th is Commissioner Womack's motion to reconsider the vote on Commissioner Coleman's amendment to delete those last 5 lines from the AR. If that, however that comes out, then after you do that on the 15th, you're back to the main motion, whether amended or in its original form. That is subject to further amendment at the table, like any motion would be. And then it would be subject to the committee's vote on that main motion. So you have 2 votes, at least 2 votes in the next committee meeting.
And we couldn't vote on it here today?
We have a motion to table, which is what the committee would be voting on next.
But on the reconsideration, if it's not tabled, will we be able to discuss and vote today?
Correct.
Okay.
And just as a point of information, if we were to table the reconsideration, we would still vote on the initial action request, or the initial.
No.
We would not.
Because you have a pending motion for reconsideration, you're tabling that, that's going to put a cutoff on today.
So if the motion to table is successful, the entire additional position request is tabled until our next
Correct,
April meeting.
correct.
So there's no process by which the 11 go through today if the
Not the way
motion to.
not the way it is structured right now. If the motion to table fails, then we're back to the motion for reconsideration. You discuss the reconsideration, depending on the vote on that, you're back to your main motion, and further amendments could come at that point.
And so as I'm thinking about this, the motion to reconsider sort of is an all-encapsulating motion to the underlying motion, right? So if that motion to reconsider is tabled, because it has stalled the underlying motion, the entire motion is stalled.
Correct.
Okay.
If the motion to table goes through, the discussion is over for today.
And this is, I mean, listen what we're trying to do here. We want to table this a month to make a decision. We've got positions here in law enforcement, which, everything I've read, that's one of the toughest sector to find people to come to work in.
Yeah.
So if we would just send it to the full board, and people that are asking that I need more information, well, that board doesn't meet for another week and a half. And if we can't get the information by then something else is wrong with the system. But if this does indeed happen, you know, we're looking almost 2 months before law enforcement can make appropriate adjustments to what a study that we authorized to be paid for showed that we are greatly understaffed. So, you know, I'm not a fan of tabling anything. I think Robert's rules got that one wrong.
Robert, that's his rules. Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. With that clarity, I withdraw my motion to table.
All right, so we have that motion withdrawn. All right, so now we have the motion to, so now we have a motion, to reconsider from Commissioner Womack, and I think that was supported by Commissioner Pakla. All right?
And I have a point of order on this one because I forgot my Robert's Rules books here, so I'm looking over at Linda. I wonder if you could explain what a yes and no vote on the motion to reconsider is. Is it the case that a yes vote on the motion to reconsider would be switching the decision that was made previously? Or are we back to reconsidering the amendment that was made, in which case a no vote would be a no to the amendment?
Let me see if I can clarify. We have a motion to reconsider the vote on Commissioner Coleman's amendment. If the motion for reconsideration passes, so yes votes, then it's as if the original amendment had failed. If the motion to reconsider no votes carry, then the amendment stays as passed, and then you're back to the main motion as amended. So yes means that you're looking at the original list of positions. No means you're looking at the abbreviated list of positions.
Thank you.
All right. If there's No other comments? Commissioner Coleman?
Just a real quick appeal to today to vote no on the reconsideration so that we can, I think Commissioner Ponstein's comments about the importance of especially these sheriff's department positions is exactly in line with my thinking behind that original amendment. So a vote of no against the reconsideration will allow us to pass, I think unanimously today, 11 of the 14.7 positions. So I would just appeal to my colleagues to vote no.
Commissioner Ponstein?
And then just so for clarification, that if that then occurs, the ones that were taken from the list can be brought back to this committee with more information then? Is that the administration? Or it's just you voted no, you're done?
If the vote for reconsideration goes down, so it's a majority no votes, then the main motion in front of you, pending any other amendments to it, would be on the short list proposed by Commissioner Coleman. If that passes, that short list will proceed through the process up toward the main board. However, under our rules for motions for recon, this board could try and put together a motion for recon on that vote at our next meeting, because you are allowed either at the current meeting or the one immediately following. And that would just be a bowl of spaghetti to try and sort out.
Okay, let's not give people, new ideas. But my question, maybe I said it wrong, is that Al is our administrator, that we didn't agree with it. With a no vote, the law enforcement ones get kicked up. What happens to the ones that were denied? Can they be reconsidered to this committee?
I believe so. I think
It could come back as a freestanding action request, like any other request for a new position.
Commissioner Womack?
Following up on Commissioner Poinstein, it's ironic he asked that because I was going to ask that as it concerns our sheriff department coming back up at another meeting, because I'm very concerned that we help our sheriff department get in compliance. That's why I supported it in the first place. But at the same time, it's a part of a slate. So it doesn't really give us an opportunity to go through each one of these and say, hey, if we're going to not prioritize some of the list that was given to us by the staff, which of these 11 would we like to move some of those around? It's given to us as a slate. And I still supported the slate in the first incident, but as learning that would take off some of our other priorities that were given to us by the staff is one of the reasons I pushed to reconsider this. So my question echoes his question when he talked about some that are originally on there. Will we be able to bring this back to our operation, some of these 11, to find out how we could fund them and get some of these positions added, if not all 11?
we can do that.
All right, let's go. Commissioner Coleman?
Just to clarify for Commissioner Womack, if we vote against the motion to reconsider, then we vote positively on the main motion. That main motion includes the 11 positions. So that would be us funding those 11 positions, or sending that to the full board with support of funding those 11. It would only be the remaining 4.7 that would have to be considered at a later date. All of these sheriff and court positions, we would be approving sending to the full board today.
All right, so we have a motion and support on the floor for the reconsideration. So a yes vote
Just so everybody's clear, there's a motion for reconsideration with support on the floor. A yes vote means that the amendment offered by Commissioner Coleman will have been deemed to have failed, and you will have a main motion in front of you with the entire list. A no vote means that the amendment offered by Commissioner Coleman has been approved, and you will have a main motion on the table in front of you with the short list.
All right, and then we do have a motion, support, and a requested roll call on that. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going back to my earlier comments here in appreciation of the process here. Staff has spent significant amounts of time in bringing these position requests forward. Staff has spent significant amounts of time in communicating these position requests to us. I see no level of detailed opposition to all of the requests that were brought forth that allow me to consider removing some of those requests and not all of the requests. So I will be voting yes on the motion to reconsider, which is in line with my initial vote of no on the underlying amendment. Because again, I believe that our oversight has created the position requests that we have here. We're not rubber stamping things for anybody, but we have created a level of oversight, a clarity of the process. We have clear indicators and criteria for how these positions were brought forth to us. They are necessary positions. There are clearly other positions that were deemed less necessary based on the objective criteria that exist. And so I'm supportive of the motion to reconsider.
Okay. All right, Lisa, can you please call roll?
All right, Commissioner Pakla,
On the motion to reconsider, yes.
Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBoer,
No.
Commissioner Ponstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
No.
and Chair Burrow.
No. All right, so now we're brought back to our original motion, and I believe we had motion and support on that original motion before the amendment. All right, can we come back on who potentially made that original motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I believe I made the original motion.
Okay, we had Pakla on the original motion, and we had support by Commissioner Womack. Commissioners, comments, questions, concerns?
So,
We're back to an hour ago, or maybe a little.
well, yeah, I mean, we could talk this whole meeting, the whole next meeting and everything. Obviously, there's a division here. By setting this up as it is, the full commission can do just what we did at the next meeting of the full board and do what we tried to do. So, I don't know how government got so complicated. I used to say that government's good at only one thing, and that's studying things to death. I don't know. I think something's got to be done differently. I mean, it seems like government meetings are now dominated by point of orders, tabling to a definite time, indefinite time, and so on. We've got to move this along. I think the staff's made a good case for all the positions. If the full commission sees that different, I'll be willing to hear their input. I think I've got the flavor of everyone that's here.
All right, Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say I thought this was, in general, a very fruitful discussion. I think, it's useful for us to have deliberations up here on the dais and have the kinds of conversations that we're having. I also want to say I think that there were some requests for information that are very useful as we're moving forward. So I look forward to those pieces of information regarding staffing levels and potential intersection between CIP requests and these positions. One thing I don't think I heard was some clarity around the comparison between the requested positions and the the positions that were here. And we may have that somewhere where we can see what were those 30-plus FTEs that were requested compared to right here. That might be in one of our budget documents that we have. But I think that might be an additional useful piece of information, because then we can have more clarity around what was that level of discernment that took place in reducing the 30-plus FTE requests that were put forth and distilling them down to these 15.7. Related to that, I also think it might be useful, Al, for there to be some level of addressing this question of how are we making sure that Kent County as a government is as efficient as possible. Those are probably conversations that you all are already having that you could put down on paper or put down on, I'm not suggesting that we have a work session on it, but I think it's useful maybe to be in one of your weekly updates is sort of a clarity around, here's how we're making sure that we are not just blank checking everything that comes in, because I do take the point very seriously that we need to be good stewards of our tax dollars, because they are the people's dollars, right? And we're doing the work on behalf of the people. So thank you.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. Although I disagree with the 4.7 positions, I will be voting in favor, because I do not believe that disagreement should, or my disagreement with it should hold back what I would consider more essential services for our residents. So I will be voting in favor.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Womack.
Just to follow up on Commissioner DeBoer's statement, certainly appreciate it, and I really do support Commissioner DeBoer and Commissioner Common bringing to the attention the need for our sheriff department, looking at our staff and their work. Is almost looking at all of these departments that are ours and going to a parent asking, what's your favorite child? Not that we are dealing with any children, we're dealing with some very intelligent, hardworking heads of these organizations. And it just seems to me that we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can help our sheriff's department come in compliance and find out, where those dollars are. And the vote is so hard because it isn't just for a year. This is something, once you put people to work, we're talking about a continuation in that work. We're talking about making sure most of these positions, if not all, are gonna have benefits, and wanting to see these workers that are bringing so much to Kent County and becoming a part of our family, making sure they're took care of in the long term as they make these lifelong decisions for their careers. So I'm going to be voting for the 14 positions that the staff brought, but I will not be throwing this paperwork away anytime soon, because I think as commissioners, we need to come together and see how we can get our staff to work on how we can make sure some of these positions do come to fruition in the future.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? I know Jeff has a comment.
Yeah, real briefly, just so we follow process, just so you all understand the process. So this is similar to capital. We have a group that approves capital. The board will look at it next week, and then it goes to finance for approval. If finance approves it, it goes right to the final budget adoption at the end of August. This is a similar process. If this group approves it, they get built into the budget and goes to the final board at the end of August when we do adoption. So there's not a separate process, not that it can't change in the middle, but that's been the process in the past, and that's how we would move forward at this point.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Okay, great, thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, any comments or questions, concerns regarding the positions? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. No. All right, that has been approved, and again, I would request that a couple of those items that, like Commissioner Pacla said, that the board does get further information on. Again, I know I have one in particular on that parks spot that I think is important to know how that domino effect happens, and if that truly doesn't include a $500,000 capital improvement. All right, Commissioner miscellaneous, any Commissioner miscellaneous? All right, everybody's out. Great conversation. Again, I thought this was a very good meeting, even though it went a little longer. Seeing no other business, meeting is adjourned.
guess I really appreciated the process here on these particular priorities. You know, I went back through my emails here and noted that we first received these position requests on February 24th in a memo from Al, one of his weekend reviews. We then had an opportunity to ask questions on these, to propose changes to them. Lots of space for communication and clarification about the positions. We then received an updated version of this on March 11th from Al. So we've had lots and lots of communication about this process. Again, I really appreciate that the process was transparent on the criteria for identifying those positions and how we were going to narrow from the number of requests that came into this right here. So that's my comment. My question then for Al is there a process outside of this particular motion for us to have conversations around general funded positions? Because I want to be clear that what we just did is we took, in passing the amendment, we just took months of work by committee and staff and we threw it out the window in removing 4.7 FTEs that had been fully vetted by staff and were clearly very necessary positions for our government operation. So is there another opportunity for us to have conversations around this, or is that it? I mean, did we just?
I mean, that's really up to the board. We do have several budget meetings remaining on the calendar. It may be that a position like the brownfield position is brought separately at some point, because that was an anticipated need of the program when the board approved it. And so there's different pathways to consider some things, but it would really be up to the board. If you want to discuss this further in another forum, obviously we do that. I mean, we do your will on that.
And a follow-up question to that is, if this motion does not pass out of this committee, what happens?
Well, my understanding is that it would need to be brought back by somebody who was on the winning side of the motion for reconsideration. Is that correct?
If this vote goes either way, a person on the winning side of the vote could bring it back to this committee for reconsideration. Somebody else, either on the finance committee or on the main board, can make amendments at those levels to address some of these positions at those levels, because the topic will be in front of those committees, the committee and the board, in the regular budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Burrow. So, over my tenure, I've talked frequently about our committee structures, and I advocated that, we've got two standing and then full, and I kept asking for some type of change, and this is the change that I'm witnessing now, and the thing that's troublesome to me now is that where I was always critical of a few that knew more than the others, and one committee dealt with more than the other. We now have a committee structure where 7 of us can decide whether we want to add positions back to assumingly make county government work better. And then the other, make sure I do my math right now, the other 14 have no say in adding these positions back to make the county, I'll say the word better for, argument's sake, but that's a little bit troublesome to me that these 3 standing committees now have become very powerful because 7 can decide for the other 14.
Commissioner Womack.
I want to follow up on Commissioner Passler's statement. I wish I could have heard those before the vote. That goes back to the question I was kind of asking the administrator about this motion. As supportive as I am of some of these 11 positions, my question was specifically targeted towards, would this be eliminating other positions that staff had already recommended for this? and I'm not sure if I got a clear explanation that would be eliminating some. I'm seeing a little clearer now after the comments by Commissioner Pashla.
Yes, to confirm, a yes vote on Commissioner Coleman's amendment meant that there were 4-point-something less positions that would be moved on to the board for approval.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other commissioners' comments? And again, if Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a quick one. Again, as far as the 4.7 positions that are not in the motion now, I'm not opposed to any of those positions specifically, but what I think is very critical is that we don't look at the funding of county government as if, well, the money is, going to be there if we keep the same millage rate, and so let's just spend it. Because it's becoming, and we can see this with the increase in property tax delinquencies from 2024, that it's becoming very, very difficult for the people with extremely thin financial margins, which is a substantially growing part of the Kent County population. It's becoming very difficult to not have something that's small push their household budget over the edge. And what I mean specifically is take a family that lives in a small home in Kent County. Maybe right now their property taxes for the year are $2,000. So guaranteed, based on the rate of property value inflation and Prop A limits, all that, like guaranteed they're going to be paying $2,100, right, the next year. Now that $100, certainly, like Commissioner Ponstein mentioned, the potential of eliminating property taxes. Like certainly, if you look at the property tax pool, that $100 is not all coming to Kent County, but a chunk of it is, and I think we need to start being extremely cautious about how we're spending money, the increases in positions, that the general, cost of living increases, et cetera, on the existing staff, because every single one of those dollars comes out of the pocket of a household in Kent County or a business in Kent County. And for many of those, like, we may look and say, well, $2,000 in taxes, well, they can absorb an extra $100. That isn't true. There is a substantial number of people, a growing number of people, where that $100 is going to break them financially because they're getting broken in many other avenues of their expenses, at the grocery store, at basically everything that, at the gas pump. The impact of the last 5 years of inflationary world that we've lived in is that these marginal differences, while they may seem to us small here and like these are great positions and we should fund them, like I agree, but we've got to keep in mind those households that are at the margin, because it's not as if they can't make it work for that extra $100, that they have some alternative. What happens if they can't pay the $100? They lose their house. And so we have got to rein ourselves in. And I appreciate the support on this, but we need to tighten our budgets. And this is a proposed increase, which I'm willing to support because I think it is fundamental. And I appreciate the support on the amendment so that we take a step to tightening our belts to maybe maybe save a family or two that would otherwise be pushed under.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Faber.
I would just point out that we're a growing community. There are more people, there are more households contributing to our general fund. It's not that we're saying just there's this finite number of people that now have to make up this increase. We're growing, we're adding people, we're adding households, we're adding to the tax base. This, to me, is about providing services to that expanded tax base.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. My single priority, my only reason I am here is because of the people. And that is who my allegiance is to as an elected official. And if I sincerely believe the people cannot afford to stay in their houses, to piggyback what Commissioner Coleman said, it is my responsibility to support the people in that. And I believe that's where we're at. I believe we have to seriously consider the burden that it is to our residents because more and more people are going to be losing their houses.
All right, Commissioner Womack.
Appreciate the comments. Just want to make sure that the public knows that in our operational meeting, that we are not able to hire taxes here at this level. Most of our taxes have been raised because of the millages that have gone out. And I just want to know if any of our staff, our administrator could clear up that fact that people know that wherever this money's coming from, it's not like we're sending out a new tax. And I'd like to know if someone on the winning team side of that vote was to bring it back, when would that opportunity be if that ends up happening?
It could be right now in this meeting, after the vote, or by our standing rules in the next committee meeting.
And the first question was whether this action, funding the positions, would increase taxes. And the answer is no.
Thank you. Commissioner Ponstein.
So mine's a couple clarifications, just especially what Commissioner Womack just said. So that's the only option. Under the new format, this would be presented to the full board. And at the full board, couldn't someone there then make an amendment to what we send them?
Hang on, it looks like.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and then while she's looking there, that's fine. So Al, just as a reminder to people too, that somehow taxes are raised, there's a lot of fingers in the pocket. According to the Headley Amendment, we have a cap on growth. Are we levying our full millage that we can?
We're levying our full millage. Typically, we provide a chart in the budget and audit documents that shows what we're not capturing since Proposal A went into effect in 1994. And so our citizens have had a very substantial relief from both the Headley Amendment, Proposal A from 1994, and then when you combine the both, there really is, and that's, I think, why you see more special millages around the state, because there's simply things that governments are not able to fund. Well, in some cases, it might be the type of thing a government can't fund out of its general fund or ad valorem property tax. In other cases, it's something that people want that the government can't afford to fund, really partly as a result of some major relief that has been granted over the last 30 to 40 to 50 years through those initiatives.
See, I was always told that we're not leveling our full rate.
My understanding is we are now. When I was here the first time, there was a small amount that the county wasn't, and it had to do with a change in how the library was funded prior to my arriving there the first time.
Historically, during Al's absence, we did have a little bit of our allowed millage rate that we were not levying, but over the years, Headley ate that up. So when we had Headley rollbacks over the years, the rollback took that unlevied amount of the millage as opposed to cutting into our budget. We used that cushion to meet our Headley obligations. And then in the context of the motion to reconsider, it is at this meeting by any person that voted for it, which would be Commissioners Womack, DeBoer, Coleman, and Burrell, could make the motion to reconsider the amendment. Alternately, the motion is still on the table, so it's, anybody else that wanted to make a further amendment could put a new amendment on the table.
All right, any other commissioners, comments, questions? Commissioner Womack.
With the further discussion, I'd like to put a motion to bring it back for further discussion and a vote.
So call for a second.
All right, do we have support?
Can I just ask a point of clarification as to, is that a suggestion to bring back the amendment for consideration?
The way I
For a
understood,
revote and discussion.
so that is a motion for reconsideration.
And from a second perspective, does the seconder also have to have been on the winning side of that conversation? Okay, then I second that.
All right, we have motion and support.
So I have a point of order. Can the same amendment be brought up within the same meeting?
Under our standing rules, the answer is yes.
All right, so we have a motion and support to reconsider the amendment. Correct?
Right, so discussion.
All right, commissioners. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate, all of the motions and amendments and whatnot going on here. Gives a lot of chances to discuss this issue, which I think is helpful. Recent discussion, I think it was Commissioner Faber pointed out that the sum of the tax increase comes from new properties and the expansion of Kent County. And that indeed is true. I think that if I recall the numbers correctly, and I'm probably off in the details, but the general fund property tax collection to Kent County for 2024 was somewhere around 141 million. And that if we keep the millage rate the same, that for 2025, or I guess 25 and 26, that would increase from 141 million to like 148, 149 million, something like that. And so there's $7 or $8 million in additional taxes. And so I don't know the exact percentage that comes from that new development, but I can assure you it's the minority percentage, and that I would be happy to join anyone who would propose that we somehow cap property taxes on everything that's existing property and only allow additional income to come from the additional properties being added to Kent County. That's something I would happily support.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to get that number, especially for our administration, of what was our budget in 2019, how many staff did we have, and what is our budget now, and how many staff do we have? Because my gut instinct tells me it could be wrong. It is significantly higher. And I am very concerned about the continued growth right now that we have in these different departments, when sincerely I believe we should be cutting and looking at ways to lessen the tax burden.
Commissioner Pacla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love numbers. I love pulling the hard numbers out of conversations. I did a little bit of math over here. In 2024, our general fund total budget was somewhere around $226 million. That includes many revenue sources. But, as I'm looking at these numbers here, the $500,000 that we are spending a significant amount of time debating accounts for 0.0022 of our general fund budget, or 0.22%. So, as we're thinking through nice round numbers, if an individual's property taxes because of the increase in value is increasing, not because the increase in millage rate is increasing, but the increase in value is increasing by $100. That means the impact on an individual for these 4.7 positions that we've heard are critical need positions is 22 cents. So just putting some things in perspective there. But I'll also note, we do in Michigan have ways to cap the increase in property taxes. That was exactly what the Headley Amendment was in 1978, and that is exactly what we do here in the county, is we don't increase people's property taxes at the same rate that inflation is happening unless it's a certain value, right? We have a way to cap the increase of property taxes that individuals are paying. That's baked into the state constitution. We did that in the 1970s and then followed it up in 1994 in order to make sure that costs weren't skyrocketing for our property owners here in Kent County and in the state of Michigan. So we are already doing these things to make sure that we are not passing undue increases in tax burden onto our residents. And the final thought I have is, this is only ever a conversation we have as it relates to government. We never ask private industry to reduce their costs when their service load gets higher. And so I think it's a really interesting perspective on, there's only one avenue that we ever ask people to tighten their belts when the economy is in a space that it's at, and that's government. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pacla. Any other commissioners? I just have, I guess, a couple things on voting for the amendment. I would prefer to get further information from some of these departments before we vote on all of these. For example, the parks manager. It's my understanding, if we approve that parks manager, it's just not that park manager at 103. I think we have a capital improvement expense that would be another $500,000 to help house that park manager. Again, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but again, from our capital improvement plan, I believe that's part of it. So it's not a $100,000 position, it's 100 ongoing plus another $500,000. In the administration office on the brownfield, right? Can the brownfield, can we recoup the 2 years that we're paying? And our ag position that we had that was part-time, did we ever fill that full-time, Al?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's a dual position. It helps administer the brownfield and it also administers all of the PDR and works with the Ag Board.
All right, so that position is currently working with brownfield.
Yes.
Okay, in that position, it'd be nice to have further information. Could that position still continue to help monitor that? If Josh could say that. Again, I think there's just a few things here that maybe this board could get a handle on, but perhaps at another meeting with more information from those departments would be helpful. Linda tells me that with her position, it potentially could save $400,000. I think that's information that would be nice for us to get to know. That's why, again, I still think putting this off to our next meeting would be beneficial as we get that information on those items to see, are they correct? What's this really costing us or saving us, right? It's important. Josh?
Do you want me to answer now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So I think one of your questions was, can the current position do some of the monitoring? That answer is yes, to an extent, and that will have to happen. As we get 1 or 2 projects, that's certainly the case. When we get to 30, and you're talking about, these compound, right? You don't approve one. It extends for 15 is our cap, or maybe a little bit longer if it's housing. So, those compound. So once we get to those, a mass of projects, not just our own authority, then our local units of government are also adding those projects, and then it's just a matter of, they would have to add that capacity that are currently hoping that we can have a uniform program countywide. And so I think the question is about when do we smartly add that, I don't know if that's a word, add that position, and what do those contracts look like with those local units, and what is our project flow? And this position is different than the others in that we can strategically add that when we feel like we need the capacity. And we can do that in a way where we already know the revenue that's coming in from those projects, because there's a lag between when they're approved and when we actually have to do the monitoring. There's a little bit of lag there. So we plan on doing that, thinking about that, and being fiscally responsible and adding that position when we need the capacity, and we can verify that revenue is there to have minimal and my plan is to have no impact to the general fund, that this all funded through the administrative capture that we have from the brownfield plans we approve, and then the contracts for service with the local units of government.
And can that be retroactive? Can we recoup our cost leading up to some of the administration that's,
Oh,
Correct.
yes, yep, so, so you're correct. And the administrative fee that we capture, it does go back to the beginning of when we're, starting that process, yeah.
okay, all right. All right.
I've just got a point of information.
There are three of them right there, so, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Peck.
For my point of information, last amendment, Commissioner DeBoer asked for a roll call vote. Is that roll call request still active, or did that get reset?
It would just be for that vote.
Okay, then I'd like to request a roll call vote on this one.
Commissioner Ponstein.
So just another point of information, we talked about Headley and, that we have a cap in place. Well, yes and no. When that house is sold, that cap is eliminated, and it could be a substantial amount for a young person looking for. So that's a whole another point of the issue of taxation in this whole state's got to be addressed.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to just point out too that we have not had a Headley rollback lately because we've had such a high inflation rate. And I would also like to table this motion until a date certain, which is our next meeting, whenever that is. I think I would like to proceed with the underlying motion of approving that first 11. And I mean, the next 4.7, we could reconsider at our next legislative and policy meeting.
Right, we have a motion to, sorry.
We have a motion to reconsider on the table. So we need something to.
Can I table that motion to reconsider?
If we have the motion to reconsider in a second on the table right now. So that's what's before the board right now. So any other motions would be concerning that pending motion from Commissioner Womack.
Can I table that? Like, that's an elevated motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I move to table the motion to reconsider until a date certain, which would be our next policy meeting.
And do I have support? Support. Support by Coleman. All right, any comments or questions?
Just a point of information regarding the motion to reconsider, which must be done in the same meeting that the original motion was a part of. So I think as a point of order, I'm not sure that we can nest those particular motions together. We could potentially nest a motion to table on the original motion for whatever it is, right? But then we could not pass, for instance, the 11 FTEs up and have only the consideration be of the 4.7.
I figured this was coming, so I double checked with Roberts, and it's silent on tabling a motion for reconsideration. So in that, and our standing rules, also, they do talk about a motion for reconsideration must be made at the meeting or the following meeting. So the motion to reconsider was made, so it's proper under our standing rules and under Roberts. The silence as to whether you can table a motion for reconsideration lets the board, this committee, make its determination. If this committee votes to table the motion for recon, it will be proper to bring it back up at the next committee meeting in its current form, which is the motion to reconsider based on Commissioner Womack.
All right, do we have any further comments or questions before we bring that to a vote? Commissioner Pakla.
Just a timeline question. When we think about the budget process here, the motion to table a certain portion of these FTE requests versus a motion to table the entirety of the FTE requests, what could it potentially do to our budgetary timeline?
I think the difference between the two is probably negligible. Jeff can jump up here and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the budget is kind of like a cumulative building process. So this goes into a budget, that would be voted fully on by the board in late August. I think it's August 28 or something like that, but, and so, really the difference between the two, whether you adopted 11 or proposed or recommended 11 today versus the full amount, I don't think the difference between those two actions is significant.
Yeah, so given the timeline, good morning, Commissioners. The operating budgets went out last week, so these positions were all included in those proposed operating budgets. So we'd have to make an adjustment to those particular positions if they got eliminated at this point.
So what difference does a month make in that process then?
They'll already be back in, so we'd probably have to figure out if these would be part of the add back money or something like that, but it does impact the process for sure.
Commissioner Pacla.
So then if I might continue, whenever I am assessing a motion to table, I think to myself, is there information that I could get between now and the next time that would meaningfully change my decision-making process on this? And for me personally, the answer is no. We're talking about potentially getting additional information about these position requests. We've been receiving information about these position requests for close to a month at this point in time. We've all had opportunities to engage with questions. We've all had opportunities to highlight concerns about the budgetary impact to these requests. So for me personally, I don't see any information that I would get that would lead me to have additional information to consider this motion right here. So I'll be voting no on the motion to table.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Coleman.
On the motion to table, I think I would prefer to vote through the 11 that we seem to all agree should go through and consider the others. But since that option isn't really before us, I'll be supporting the motion to table because I do think that there has been raised some good information gathering questions from Chair Burrell and on just some of the particulars of some of the positions, and also from Commissioner DeBoer on the overall expansion of positions here at King County. I recall when I started on this board a decade ago that we had somewhere just under 1,800 positions. I know we're now over 2,000 positions, but I would be interested to see maybe a shorter time frame, like the last 5 years or so. Where have we increased positions, and primarily the number of positions? I think the budgetary impact would be interesting as well. But just where have those positions been added? Because overall, I think most of those additions have been good and necessary things. But to get a more holistic picture, I think that it would be useful to see that comparison in detail.
All right. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? All right. Again, just having the last word. Again, I would still like to see this get tabled and that we get some of that additional information on that. So that being said,
Motion to table to April 15th meeting.
this is a motion to table to our next ops meeting, which is April 15th. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to
You have a
table?
request for a roll call, I think.
Did we have a roll call on this one?
The roll call was for the underlying reconsideration.
All right, so we have,
Just for clarification, I mean, we're tabling an amendment, so I guess I'm not following what all is gonna happen when we bring it back. We're gonna be discussing the amendment again, or I mean, because the one passed and now it doesn't, but
my understanding would be, and Linda could correct me if I'm wrong, is that there'd be additional information that those positions that we could gather from those positions or from those leaders in those departments. At that point in time, we could either amend those positions if we still didn't agree that all of them were acceptable to us. Couldn't we still amend that?
So what is actually on the table that would be tabled till April 15th is Commissioner Womack's motion to reconsider the vote on Commissioner Coleman's amendment to delete those last 5 lines from the AR. If that, however that comes out, then after you do that on the 15th, you're back to the main motion, whether amended or in its original form. That is subject to further amendment at the table, like any motion would be. And then it would be subject to the committee's vote on that main motion. So you have 2 votes, at least 2 votes in the next committee meeting.
And we couldn't vote on it here today.
We have a motion to table, which is what the committee would be voting on next.
But on the reconsideration, if it's not tabled, will we be able to discuss and vote today?
Correct.
Okay.
And just as a point of information, if we were to table the reconsideration, we would still vote on the initial action request, or the initial.
No.
We would not.
Because you have a pending motion for reconsideration, you're tabling that, that's going to put a cutoff on today.
So if the motion to table is successful, the entire additional position request is tabled until our next
Correct,
April meeting.
correct.
So there's no process by which the 11 go through today if the
Not the way
motion to.
not the way it is structured right now. If the motion to table fails, then we're back to the motion for reconsideration. You discuss the reconsideration, depending on the vote on that, you're back to your main motion, and further amendments could come at that point.
And so as I'm thinking about this, the motion to reconsider sort of is an all-encapsulating motion to the underlying motion, right? So if that motion to reconsider is tabled, because it has stalled the underlying motion, the entire motion is stalled.
Correct.
Okay.
If the motion to table goes through, the discussion is over for today.
And this is, I mean, listen what we're trying to do here. We want to table this a month to make a decision. We've got positions here in law enforcement, which, everything I've read, that's one of the toughest sector to find people to come to work in.
Yeah.
So if we would just send it to the full board, and then people that are asking that I need more information, well, that board doesn't meet for another week and a half. And if we can't get the information by then something else is wrong with the system. But if this does indeed happen, you know, we're looking almost 2 months before law enforcement can make appropriate adjustments to what a study that we authorized to be paid for showed that we are greatly understaffed. So, you know, I'm not a fan of tabling anything. I think Robert's rules got that one wrong.
Robert, that's his rules. Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. With that clarity, I withdraw my motion to table.
All right, so we have that motion withdrawn. All right, so now we have the motion to, so now we have a motion, now we have a motion to reconsider from Commissioner Womack, and I think that was supported by Commissioner Pakla. All right?
And I have a point of order on this one because I forgot my Robert's Rules books here, so I'm looking over at Linda. I wonder if you could explain what a yes and no vote on the motion to reconsider is. Is it the case that a yes vote on the motion to reconsider would be switching the decision that was made previously? Or are we back to reconsidering the amendment that was made, in which case a no vote would be a no to the amendment?
Let me see if I can clarify. We have a motion to reconsider the vote on Commissioner Coleman's amendment. If the motion for reconsideration passes, so yes votes, then it's as if the original amendment had failed. If the motion to reconsider no votes carry, then the amendment stays as passed, and then you're back to the main motion as amended. So yes means that you're looking at the original list of positions. No means you're looking at the abbreviated list of positions.
Thank you.
All right. If there's No other comments? Commissioner Coleman?
Just a real quick appeal to today to vote no on the reconsideration so that we can, I think Commissioner Ponstein's comments about the importance of especially these sheriff's department positions is exactly in line with my thinking behind that original amendment. So a vote of no against the reconsideration will allow us to pass, I think unanimously today, 11 of the 14.7 positions. So I would just appeal to my colleagues to vote no.
Commissioner
And
Ponstein?
then just so for clarification, that if that then occurs, the ones that were taken from the list can be brought back to this committee with more information then? Is that the administration? Or it's just you voted no, you're done?
If the vote for reconsideration goes down, so it's a majority no votes, then the main motion in front of you, pending any other amendments to it, would be on the short list proposed by Commissioner Coleman. If that passes, that short list will proceed through the process up toward the main board. However, under our rules for motions for recon, this board could try and put together a motion for recon on that vote at our next meeting, because you are allowed either at the current meeting or the one immediately following. And that would just be a bowl of spaghetti to try and sort out.
Okay, let's not give people, new ideas. But my question, maybe I said it wrong, is that Al is our administrator, that we didn't agree with it. With a no vote, the law enforcement ones get kicked up. What happens to the ones that were denied? Can they be reconsidered to this committee?
I believe so. I think
It could come back as a freestanding action request, like any other request for a new position.
Commissioner Womack?
Following up on Commissioner Poinstein, it's ironic he asked that because I was going to ask that as it concerns our sheriff department coming back up at another meeting, because I'm very concerned that we help our sheriff department get in compliance. That's why I supported it in the first place. But at the same time, it's a part of a slate. So it doesn't really give us an opportunity to go through each one of these and say, hey, if we're gonna not prioritize some of the list that was given to us by the staff, which of these 11 would we like to move some of those around? It's given to us as a slate. And I still supported the slate in the first incident, but as learning that would take off some of our other priorities that were given to us by the staff is one of the reasons I pushed to reconsider this. So my question echoes his question when he talked about some that are originally on there. Will we be able to bring this back to our operation, some of these 11, to find out how we could fund them and get some of these positions added, if not all 11?
we can do that.
All right, let's go. Commissioner Coleman?
Just to clarify for Commissioner Womack, if we vote against the motion to reconsider, then we vote positively on the main motion. That main motion includes the 11 positions. So that would be us funding those 11 positions, or sending that to the full board with support of funding those 11. It would only be the remaining 4.7 that would have to be considered at a later date. All of these sheriff and court positions, we would be approving sending to the full board today.
All right, so we have a motion and support on the floor for the reconsideration. So a yes vote
just so everybody's clear, there's a motion for reconsideration with support on the floor. A yes vote means that the amendment offered by Commissioner Coleman will have been deemed to have failed, and you will have a main motion in front of you with the entire list. A no vote means that the amendment offered by Commissioner Coleman has been approved, and you will have a main motion on the table in front of you with the short list.
All right, and then we do have a motion, support, and a requested roll call on that. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going back to my earlier comments here in appreciation of the process here. Staff has spent significant amounts of time in bringing these position requests forward. Staff has spent significant amounts of time in communicating these position requests to us. I see no level of detailed opposition to all of the requests that were brought forth that allow me to consider removing some of those requests and not all of the requests.
Right.
So I will be voting yes on the motion to reconsider, which is in line with my initial vote of no on the underlying amendment. Because again, I believe that our oversight has created the position requests that we have here. We're not rubber stamping things for anybody, but we have created a level of oversight, a clarity of the process. We have clear indicators and criteria for how these positions were brought forth to us. They are necessary positions. There are clearly other positions that were deemed less necessary based on the objective criteria that exist. And so I'm supportive of the motion to reconsider.
Okay. All right, Lisa, can you please call roll?
All right, Commissioner Pakla,
On the motion to reconsider, yes.
Commissioner Faber,
Yes.
Commissioner Womack,
Yes.
Commissioner DeBoer,
No.
Commissioner Ponstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
No.
and Chair Burrow.
No. All right, so now we're brought back to our original motion, and I believe we had motion and support on that original motion before the amendment. All right, can we come back on who potentially made that original motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I believe I made the original motion.
Okay, we had Pakla on the original motion, and we had support by Commissioner Womack. Commissioners, comments, questions, concerns?
So,
We're back to an hour ago, or maybe a little.
well, yeah, I mean, we could talk this whole meeting, the whole next meeting and everything. Obviously, there's a division here. By setting this up as it is, the full commission can do just what we did at the next meeting of the full board and do what we tried to do. So, I don't know how government got so complicated. I used to say that government's good at only one thing, and that's studying things to death. I don't know, I think something's got to be done differently. I mean, it seems like government meetings are now dominated by point of orders, tabling to a definite time, indefinite time, and so on. We've got to move this along. I think the staff's made a good case for all the positions. If the full commission sees that different, I'll be willing to hear their input. I think I've got the flavor of everyone that's here.
All right, Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say I thought this was, in general, a very fruitful discussion. I think, it's useful for us to have deliberations up here on the dais and have the kinds of conversations that we're having. I also want to say I think that there were some requests for information that are very useful as we're moving forward. So I look forward to those pieces of information regarding staffing levels and potential intersection between CIP requests and these positions. One thing I don't think I heard was some clarity around the comparison between the requested positions and the positions that were here. And we may have that somewhere where we can see what were those 30-plus FTEs that were requested compared to right here. That might be in one of our budget documents that we have. But I think that might be an additional useful piece of information, because then we can have more clarity around what was that level of discernment that took place in reducing the 30-plus FTE requests that were put forth and distilling them down to these 15.7. Related to that, I also think it might be useful, Al, for there to be some level of addressing this question of how are we making sure that Kent County as a government is as efficient as possible. Those are probably conversations that you all are already having that you could put down on paper or put down on, I'm not suggesting that we have a work session on it, but I think it's useful maybe to be in one of your weekly updates is sort of a clarity around, here's how we're making sure that we are not just blank checking everything that comes in, because I do take the point very seriously that we need to be good stewards of our tax dollars, because they are the people's dollars, right? And we're doing the work on behalf of the people. So thank you.
Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. Although I disagree with the 4.7 positions, I will be voting in favor, because I do not believe that disagreement should, or my disagreement with it should hold back what I would consider more essential services for our residents. So I will be voting in favor.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Womack.
Just to follow up on Commissioner DeBoer's statement, certainly appreciate it, and I really do support Commissioner DeBoer and Commissioner Common bringing to the attention the need for our sheriff department, looking at our staff and their work. Is almost looking at all of these departments that are ours and going to a parent asking, what's your favorite child? Not that we are dealing with any children, we're dealing with some very intelligent, hardworking heads of these organizations. And it just seems to me that we've got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can help our sheriff's department come in compliance and find out, where those dollars are. And the vote is so hard because it isn't just for a year. This is something, once you put people to work, we're talking about a continuation in that work. We're talking about making sure most of these positions, if not all, are going to have benefits, and wanting to see these workers that are bringing so much to Kent County and becoming a part of our family, making sure they're took care of in the long term as they make these lifelong decisions for their careers. So I'm going to be voting for the 14 positions that the staff brought, but I will not be throwing this paperwork away anytime soon, because I think as commissioners, we need to come together and see how we can get our staff to work on how we can make sure some of these positions do come to fruition in the future.
All right, any other commissioners' comments or questions? I know Jeff has a comment.
Yeah, real briefly, just so we follow process, just so you all understand the process. So this is similar to capital. We have a group that approves capital. The board will look at it next week, and then it goes to finance for approval. The finance approves it, it goes right to the final budget adoption at the end of August. This is a similar process. If this group approves it, they get built into the budget and goes to the final board at the end of August when we do adoption. So there's not a separate process, not that it can't change in the middle, but that's been the process in the past, and that's how we would move forward at this point.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, any comments or questions, concerns regarding the positions? If not, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. No. All right, that has been approved, and again, I would request that a couple of those items that, like Commissioner Pacla said, that the board does get further information on. Again, I know I have one in particular on that Parks spot that I think is important to know how that domino effect happens, and if that truly doesn't include a $500,000 capital improvement. All right, Commissioner miscellaneous, any commissioner miscellaneous? All right, everybody's out. Great conversation. Again, I thought this was a very good meeting, even though it went a little longer. Seeing no other business, meeting is adjourned.